Hello. Today, we are happy to present you a project about inequalities in education throughout the years.
Here is a quick overview on what we will touch upon during this presentation. We will start with an introduction and an educational history timeline, which will be followed by inequalities concerning knowledge, skills, and gender in ancient times, including ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and ancient Rome, with a quick comparison at the end. We will continue with the transition period between 500 and 1800 and an analysis of the first and second wave of the compulsory education.
Let's now come to the contemporary period. We could think that education in the contemporary period is more equal due to human progress, but it's not the case. There are still today many different kinds of inequalities. We have identified three kinds of inequalities. First, between countries. Second, inside a single country. And third, there are also inequalities between private and public schools. We'll finish with the presentation by the course of action and conclusion.
To start off, we need to found the basics. When we speak about skills, we are referring to practical and manual skills only. In regards to education, it is the passing on of skills and knowledge from generations to generation. The process of education marked a difference between us and the other species. During the presentation, we will explore many different inequalities in education throughout the history.
Here is a quick summary timeline about education throughout the years, starting with the first known form of school that appeared in 2000s before Christ, followed by the democratization of schools in Greek and Roman Empire from minus 450 to 200 at the same time as Egypt in the end of the era. The first university as we know it today was called Al-Qarawiyyin and appeared in 895 in current Morocco, founded by Fatima al-Fiqh. Surprisingly enough, the apparition of paper and pencils for scholar use only started in the 1900s.
We will start the ancient time topic with the Egyptian Empire. The boys from high social classes were eligible to prince school where the education quality was the highest. However, if you were a girl from high social classes, you were happy to attend a school, and if you were a girl from lower social classes, you were only taught to do housework. However, if you were a boy from lower social classes, you would still attend a school. And with high success in your work, you could even attend prince school.
In ancient Egypt, the society was organized in very compartmentalized classes. At the top of the society, in terms of political power, there is Pharaoh, then the vizier, then the noble and the priest, and then the scribes. They are all the most educated people in the society. The Pharaoh has the highest political power. On the contrary, their average physically condition is not the best due to their poor. They have maximum possible rights. The vizier have also great political power as well, has important right due to their level in the society, but the physical condition is very low. The noble and the priest have less political power and as a consequence less right than the former. Their physical condition is not so good either, and concerning the scribe, they are rather powerful, have many rights due to their cultural power, but their physical condition is not good at all.
First, we are going to compare the two lowest Egyptian social classes, the craftsmen and enslaved. So they both don't have any political power, so their voices don't count. They have a need to have a very good average physicality because they have to work really, really hard every day, but they don't have any rights.
To represent the differences in knowledge and skills between social classes in ancient times, we use the pyramid diagram. This diagram shows the education system in terms of knowledge. We can see that obviously on top of the pyramid, Pharaoh and Vizier, who are the highest social classes in the empire, have direct access to prince school education. Nobles and priors could have both access to prince or religious school. Scribes had access to advanced historical education which regrouped whole the past history of the Egyptian empire. Craftsmen were only able to attend basic schools. At the time, being enslaved restricted you from being in a school.
In regards to skills, we can see that the pharaoh, vizier, nobles, and priest didn't need to perform any skills as they were assisted in their everyday life. In contrary, enslaved craftsmen and scribes needed to master specific skills to satisfy the needs of the higher social classes.
Now we will see gender inequalities in ancient Greece. Following to the position in the society, the education was quite different according to the gender. The male at the top of the pyramid were very well educated and eligible to learn how to read and write. For those who had the bottom of the pyramid, that was a palestra, which was a training ground in each school. For the girls at the top of the pyramid, they had tutor paid by the family. For those who were less lucky at the bottom of the pyramid, they didn't have the chance to go to school, they only did housework.
Greek Empire is really based in all trading, and all the highest social classes, such as Athens, took decisions for the empire. Athens had low average physicality because they are permanently assisted and they have all the rights. Metics don't have any power to make political decisions, they work really hard and have good rights. Freedmen, they have no political power, they constitute the fleet army and not belong to someone, so they have a good average physicality but no right. And the last one, enslaved, they have no political power, a good average physicality because they work hard every day but don't have any right.
The social education structure in terms of knowledge in the Greek Empire is the following. The Athens had access to the highest level of education available in the country. Below that, the metics were only taught the necessary knowledge for their family business to go on. As freedmen were part of the military, they were educated to war strategy. No form of education was available for enslaved people, like in the Egyptian Empire, because it was a part of the right they didn't have access to.
In terms of skills, we can see the same trend as in the Egyptian Empire, with the higher social class helped and assisted in their everyday life by the enslaved. In contrary, the metics and the freedmen were taught skills respectively to their work.
Now we'll see gender inequalities in Roman Empire. In ancient Rome, there was a difference between boys and girls in terms of education according to their social background. For the richest boy, they had a private teacher, whereas the poorest learned how to fight. their education did not include cultural topics. Concerning the girls of the highest classes, they just learn how to read and write, but if you are a girl of the low classes, you will learn nothing, only housework.
For Roman Empire, we'll be looking at social classes, and first, the emperor will lead the total empire with all political power. Emperor have a good average physicality and all the rights. In second, we have senators who have a good political power, so they can help the emperor making decisions. Senators have a low average physicality because they not belong to the army and are assisted all the time. They have all the rights and they can go to any public or private schools. Below them, equestrians, who are the leaders of the army, and they have some advantages such as their own horses, and they have a good average physicality and rights. Next are plebeians, who lived in the main city and take part in the economy through their businesses, such as baker. Equestrians have no political power, no average physicality, and just a few rights.
The lower part of the Roman social structure was composed of Latins, foreigners, freedmen, and enslaved. Latins composed the basic Roman citizens. The political power, average physicality, and rights were all average. The characteristics of foreigners and freedmen were pretty similar, with low political power, a high average physicality, and a normal amount of rights, as they were part of the military. Because of their high working times, the enslaved had a pretty high average physicality, but no political power, and either no rights at all, as they belonged to someone.
As the empire we saw beforehand, the emperor and the senators had access to private education. The equestrians, which were part of the army, were educated to war strategies and battlefield techniques. Plebeians and Latin were only educated in relation to their family business. However, foreigners, freedmen, and enslaved did not have access to education as it was part of the rights they didn't have.
If we look at the Roman society in terms of skill, we can see that there is a major inequality in terms of skills. And the inequalities are not what we would think. Indeed, we can see first of all that the emperor and the senator does not need any skill. When you go down the pyramid, you can see that for each level there are very specific skill needed. For example, equestrians need to know how to ride horse and fight. Plebeians need to know how to work and trade. Foreigner and freedman, he must have fighting and survival skill. And at the bottom of his pyramid, slave who have domestic skill only.
In conclusion, we made a rank of the three main empires about the inequalities of gender. So first, it is the Egyptian with a small disparities between male and female. In second place, we have the Greek Empire, which is medium but still existing inequalities. And in third place, the Roman that are not too far from Greek Empire.
Now, let's move to the comparison between the three empires. We use the podium to illustrate the ranking, the first being the empire to treat the most fairly its population, and the third being the empire to treat the less fairly its population. So as you can see, in terms of knowledge, Egyptian empire are the first. The runner-up is the Greek Empire, followed by the Roman Empire.
At the top of the podium for skills, we can find the Roman Empire, as nearly all the social classes had to learn the military skills. As a close second, we can find the Greek Empire, as they were too very oriented towards conflict, and the Egyptian Empire is the last, as only a few social classes were part of the army, so only they needed to have skills. The differences were calculated through the army, as all of them had at least two social classes involving manual skills.
Now we will see gender inequalities between 500 and 1800. In the Middle Age, the gender inequalities were extreme. Boys from the high social classes had a private teacher, whereas those from the lowest classes learned only physical work. If you were a girl from the high social classes, you would rarely be accepted in school, and for those at the bottom of the pyramid, they would not have the opportunity to go to school. You will learn only the domestic work.
First, we need to know that the highest social classes in Middle Ages is similar to Roman Empire. Kings have all the rights and political power, but are always assisted, so they have a low average physicality. Next is nobles, who have a better average physicality and the highest rights. They are followed by clergy, who has the same characteristics as nobles, and the last one, knights, with low political power but some rights.
We'll now be looking at the Middle Ages social classes, constituted by merchants, doctors, and clergy. Merchants have average political power, average physicality, and rights. Doctors have no political power, a really high average physicality, and a low amount of rights. Clergy have either no rights and no political power, but a good average physicality.
To finish off this introduction to the social classes of the Middle Ages, we're looking into the lower ones, with the serfs and the peasants. Both have the same characteristics, with no political power, very low rights, but they were not owned by someone, which doesn't make them enslaved, and a high average physicality, as they were both working manually all day.
If we focus on the upper classes, we can see that even within these upper classes, there are inequality in terms of knowledge. First, the king was very educated, especially in Latin and liberal arts. The noble had trading knowledge, the clergy, religious education, and the knight, who had mainly private education.
After the inequalities in Middle Ages knowledge, we are passing to inequalities in skills. So king and nobles don't have any skills because they are assisted in everyday tasks. Clergy who don't need any skills, and knights who have fighting skills.
The inequalities between the Middle Ages middle social classes are the following. Merchants are only educated to necessary knowledge needed for family business to work, while doctors have access to a specific medical education. Religious education is taught to lower clergy.
So, moving on to the middle classes, always for skills, we can find the merchants, who are educated to persuasion and trading skills in the sector of their family business, doctors who are educated to medical interventions, which requires very much precision and medical skills, and the lower clergy, who are basically the servants of the higher clergy, which means they need to learn the basics of domestic skills.
If we focus on the lower classes, we can see that the serf and the peasant had absolutely no form of education at all.
In terms of skills in the Middle Ages, serfs and peasants are the lowest classes and are the only ones with skills. For serfs, farming and domestic skills, and for peasants, working and farming skills.
To introduce compulsory education waves, we will use a timeline of events. The first country to adapt its law to the idea was Denmark in 1739. Between 1817 and 1892, two countries joined the movement, these two being France and United Kingdom, having a strong impact, and raising a lot of foreign countries to do so as well. As expected, from the 1820s to 1880s, the Western Europe populations fought for imposing compulsory education in their country. Following these events, most of the countries of the world adapted the laws to follow the movement.
The first compulsory education wave took place in Western Europe between 1820 and 1882, with the both superpowers of the time, England and France, and other important countries such as Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, and Italy, and two other countries from the more eastern part of Europe, Greece and Turkey.
In this slide, we can see a map which shows the countries where the children are not forced to go to school. They are not very numerous and they are very small and poor countries, probably which do not have the means to assume financially the support of public education.
Next topic is about inequalities between countries. We will compare the average attendance between less economically developed countries and more economically developed countries. So the attendance in primary school is 91.5% in opposition to 98.2% of the MEDCs. On average, the attendance at school in LDCs is 83.9% in opposition to 95.4% in MEDCs. In high school, the attendance is 68.8% in opposition to 88.2% in MEDCs. In total attendance, we can see that the number of children continuing until high school is less in LDCs than in MEDCs, with 81.4% in opposition to 94%.
Talking economically, the GDP per capita of MEDCs is $8,823 more on average than GDP per capita in LEDCs, making the development of schools hard for the governments and their access difficult for families. This is the reason why knowledge education is not always guaranteed in some countries.
For this last part on inequalities in education, we'll look into inequalities in our contemporary world, with inequalities between countries, inside the country itself, and between private and public school. We'll start with a comparison between Namibia, an LEDC, and USA, a strong MEDC. We'll compare structure, compulsory age limit, and school attendance. Namibia has 7 years of elementary education, 3 years of junior secondary education, and only 2 years of high school. In comparison, USA has 6 years only of elementary school, 3 years of middle school, and 4 years of high school. In both countries, school is compulsory from the age of 6 to the age of 16. School attendance in elementary school in Namibia is 98.6, followed by 98.5 in junior secondary education, and only 84% in high school. For the United States, they have 98% of elementary school attendance, 99.8% in middle school, and 97% in high school.
In the slide, we can see an example of inequalities with a comparison between Brazil and China. In Brazil, the children study from the age of 6 until the age of 17. In China, the compulsory age limit is from the age of 7 until students complete 9 years of education and from the school attendance, there is almost no missing students.
This example is going to be a comparison between two indices, Spain and Italy. In Spain, the structure is 6 years for the primary education, 4 years for the secondary education, and 2 years for the Spanish baccalaureate. In Italy, the structure is not really different apart for high school. In elementary school, it is 5 years, in middle school 3 years, and in high school 5 years. For both countries, the compulsory age limit is from 6 until the age of 16. But the school attendance is a little bit less in Italy than in Spain, with 95.8% in elementary school opposed to 98.1% in Spain. In middle school, the attendance is 97.8% in opposition to 99.6%. And in high school, it is 93.6% in opposition to 99.2% in Spain.
As you may know, inequalities are not always from a side of a border to another. Some occur within a country itself. The two main ones being horizontal and vertical inequality. Horizontal inequality is a social and cultural difference, like ethnic groups, for example, while vertical inequalities are inequalities within those groups. Economical and ethnical differences between people constitute the horizontal inequalities, while vertical inequality is almost every time about religion or economy.
To show the inequalities between genders, regions, wealth, ethnicities, and religion inside the country itself, we chose Afghanistan as it holds a vast diversity of people. 92% of the males attend schools, against only 59 for female. 92% in the Kabul region against only 33% in the Orozgan region. 89% in the richest wells against only 61% in the middle wealth. 66% in the Hazara ethnicity against only 35% in the Balak ethnicity. 72% in the Sunni Muslim religion against only 36% in the Shia Muslim religion.
For this slide, we will see the inequalities between public and private school. In US, the most of the students go in public school. The private school require paying in contrary of the public school. Private school gives more advanced education than the public school.
As an example of inequalities between private and public school, we found Trinity School as private one and Thomas Jefferson in public school, both in USA. In the private school, the diploma success is higher, they employ more skilled teachers, and schooling at the school offer opportunities. However, the public school also have advantages such as no religious and social restriction. The choices is based on actual abilities and the education is totally free and paid by people taxes.
Now that you know all the equalities that exist in education, you might ask yourself if there is a way to reduce them. Well, by giving the access to educational resources and furnitures to low-income families in need. Another course of action would be to close the digital divide by returning to physical classes, for example. Equitable funding is an important aspect as well, as spending the same amount of money to develop every school would be more fair. Finally, to favorize the public sector to slow down the rise of private education, so balancing every child's chance to succeed in the future.
As a conclusion, if life was a house, education would be its foundations. It is essential to build a wealthy life. Therefore, any inequalities at this point will last forever, and most of the time the gap caused is irreversible. Things must change so that everyone around the world will get the same chance to succeed, no matter where they were born. I hope you learned a lot from this presentation. It was a pleasure for us to show it to you. Thank you.